just, I mean, they were just blowing the test. You know, I'm sweating bullets, and boy, they just, I joke and say, Dale, you can graduate summa cum laude, magna cum laude, or thank you laude. So I'm a proud thank you laude graduate of Morehouse School of Medicine. But no, but the thing about Morehouse is, and this is what, regrettably, some of you who go to non-Black schools, you don't realize. It's normal for us to see Black physicians all day at Morehouse School of Medicine, at Meharry, Howard, or Drew. But when you get into residency, it's a culture shock. You never see a Black physician generally as a resident. And that did take me for a loop when I got to Baylor.
What is up, family? I'm Dr. Dale, the author of How to Raise a Doctor Wisdom from Parents Who Did It, the author of the Dr. Doc Children's series, the author of Pre-Med Mondays, the author of Black Men in White Coats, and a new book that's coming out very soon. So stay tuned, keep your eye out for it. And you listen to the Black Men in White Coats podcast, a place where clinicians have the platform to share their stories with listeners like you. Am I excited about today's guest? You all have no idea how excited I am. We were just joking before we started recording. He was like, "You haven't invited me on." And I said, "I haven't invited you on because I had to build my credibility to be able to approach you." So I'm not going to do too big of an introduction, but all I will say is, so I've known this gentleman, and I'll tell you, it's Dr. Wayne J. Riley. He is the 17th president of SUNY Downstate Health Science University. And I've known him for 16 years. He probably hasn't known me for 16 years, but I've known him for 16 years when my wife started attending Meharry University, which he was president, I believe.
The best doctor in your household.
Exactly. Hands down. She is the best doctor in the household. But I've looked up to this gentleman for quite some time now, 16 years. So I'm super excited to have him on the show and pick his brains for you all, but maybe more importantly for me, so I can know and I can gain some wisdom from him. Dr. Wayne J. Riley, welcome to Black Men in White Coats.
Thank you. What an honor, Dale. And I was teasing him off camera about, Dr. O's killing it. Every time I pick up something, he's winning this award, doing this documentary, just doing wonderful work as a physician. So proud of Dale, of you and your wife, who's a distinguished Meharrian. She was one of my students. Matter of fact, I met you when you were doing some rotations before you guys got married. You spent some time in Nashville. That's how we first met, and we've been connected ever since.
I'm curious, do you really remember that, or is that one of those things where it's like, you got to act like you remember it? Because I remember it, of course.
No, I remember it. I remember it because I was impressed. You were at Duke. And look, Duke is one of the major places for medical education and clinical care. And, I just think about all the great doctors that have come out of Duke and legends of medicine. So no, Duke is an institution I was very, very aware of. Matter of fact, I had done one of my rogue rotations while I was at Morehouse School of Medicine at Duke. No, it's a great place. I was very, very impressed with a Duke medical student that visited and was in my community at Meharry.
Yeah, so I went to do for residency. I was at University of Missouri then.
Oh, that's right. It goes back even further, right? Because your chair is a good friend of mine, Dave Fleming,
exactly,
who succeeded me as I succeeded David, Dr. Fleming. I'd forgotten about University of Missouri. Dr. Dave Fleming was the president of the ACP before me. So, and he and I used to talk about you then. You're right. He was very proud of you. So, gosh, you're right. It did go way back, Dale.
Yeah, way back.
Yeah.
And I appreciated it because, and honestly, I wasn't even doing rotations at Meharry, right? So I would just go there and visit. But because, fourth year med school and the way my med school worked was you would do like clinicals for like 7 or 8 weeks and you got a week off. So I was always at Meharry for that week off. And I would actually go to class and I would go to lecture and I would do everything.
I know.
Nobody ever kicked me out.
I think I met you in the library or something in the Cresci building where our library was at Meharry. So right. So you were omnipresent at Meharry.
Yeah, you're right. So I studied for step 2 in the library at Meharry. I did so many things, and it's to the point where my it's not my classmates, Janae's classmates who graduated from Meharry, when they have like reunions, they'll like call me or text me and say, "Hey Dale, you going to the reunion?" And I'm like, I didn't graduate. That's my wife. But I really appreciate it. One of the things I remember the most is towards the end of 4th year, I remember there was this like some sort of series capstone course or something, and you would come to talk to the people who were going into internal medicine. and I went into
Yes.
internal medicine. So I would go there, and I still remember a lot of the stuff you said in those sessions, which meant a lot to me and actually impacted me to this day, the way I go about my business and execute myself. But not about me. I'm super excited to pick your brain and hear your story, because you've accomplished so much. I mean, presidency after presidency, and not just of institutions, but of various societies. And I want to build our way up to that. But let's take it all the way back to childhood.
Mhm.
And even before I hear about your childhood, I'm curious to know about, because I really believe in this idea of families of origin and you're influenced by your parents. I'm curious to know, what kind of people were your parents? What things did they go through? What were they like that influenced who you've become today?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. I'm very proud of my humble beginnings. I come from New Orleans, Louisiana, and both my parents were born in New Orleans. My paternal grandparents were a good salt of earth, what we call now working class people. My grandfather drove a truck, was a truck driver, delivering supplies to businesses in New Orleans, and then a part-time jazz musician. He probably only had a third grade education. My maternal grandmother was a domestic in New Orleans. I don't think she had but a third grade education. But just wonderful salt of earth people. And they had one child, my father. On my maternal side, my maternal grandparents, my grandfather was a barber, and my grandmother again was a domestic. She was a housekeeper at one of the French Quarter hotels. Good, hardworking, salt earth people who had kids and made sure their kids had better opportunities than they had. None of them went to college. Only two of them went to high school. My four grandparents. And so, my late father, was a good student in segregated schools in New Orleans, and he got the best advice that probably made my life possible in the life of my mother and my four siblings. Is he was told to get the hell out of New Orleans. In 1950s, New Orleans was not a great place to be for a smart African American kid. And he had an advisor. He said, "Riley, you're too smart. You need to go to University of Michigan." So my dad went to University of Michigan. That was a defining educational experience of his life. And when he finished University of Michigan, he secretly married my mother,
Secretly.
his childhood sweetheart, and then went off to marry medical college.
Oh.
So my dad was a Baharian, and then later became a surgeon. And then I'm the oldest of five. Out of my mom and dad's five children, four of us are involved in healthcare. One physician, two administrators, and one nurse. So I think obviously in the household with a physician and growing up around physicians and nurses and understanding the importance of healthcare and all, it must have set in. But as I tell students all the time, Dale, I had a very circuitous route towards medicine. And I'm very transparent with medical students today. I didn't get in medical school till my third try. I had terrible MCAT scores my first two times. And I had some blemishes on my record at Yale in the sciences that I had to repair. And I was on a fence between law and medicine my whole time at Yale. I struggled a little bit in the sciences at Yale. And
let's rewind to even before you got into Yale, because just even getting into Yale is huge. So what was a childhood like that developed you to the point where you could even be accepted into Yale? Obviously, you have parents who have done well and put that in your mind, but what kind of kid were you that you developed yourself to the point where you could actually get accepted into Yale?
Well, it's an even running joke with all my siblings now, even under our advanced age. My mother never had to tell me to do my homework. I had it done before everybody else.
Okay, so you were that kid.
Yeah, I was that kid, and my brother not so much, and my sisters. But no, I guess I joke with people all the time. If I could go to school all my life, I'd be just fine and make six figures. I love school. I love school. When I think my earliest memories, I loved going to school. And we moved around a lot because my dad I was born his sophomore year at Meharry. And then, we moved to Rochester, New York for his internship. Back then, they used to do 1 year internships. Then we went to San Francisco for the first year of his surgery residency. Then we went to Germany because he went in the Army. He was an Army doctor for 3 years. Then we came back to Buffalo, New York, where he finished his surgery. training. And then we went back to New Orleans. I think I got back to New Orleans at the age of 9, where then I went to elementary school, but we moved around a lot those 2 years. So I remember going to school in Germany. I remember going to school in San Francisco, and then of course in Buffalo, and then back in New Orleans. So I always loved school. And then I went to, my dad was big on education. He used to always say, look, I can't leave you guys a whole bunch of money, but I'm going to leave you guys well educated, because he believed in education. That's what made the difference between his life and the life of my grandparents, is that they made it possible for him to be a good student and to see him go off to the University of Michigan, then on to Yale, to Meharry, and then their grandson, his son, go on to Yale and to Tulane and then Morehouse School of Medicine. And my siblings go to Tulane and Howard, and WashU and all the great schools that all of us have benefited by. But, I love school. In high school, I was an honors graduate of a predominantly white Catholic all boys high school. I was Mr. Everything in high school. I was copy editor of the yearbook, copy editor of the newspaper, on the student council, member of the National Honor Society, started the first Black History Week in a predominantly white school, back in the 70s. And, it's somewhere along the way, I had this seed planted. I wanted to go to an Ivy League school, and I applied to, a number of Ivy League schools, and I had the choice, Dale. I had the choice between Yale, Brown, Princeton, and Penn. I chose to go to Yale.
Did you know you were going to be a doctor at that point when you were choosing schools?
Well, I knew that, when you grow up with a doctor, I love my late father, one of my first heroes. My dad was never pushy about medicine, but he used to expose me to it. So, Saturday morning, I remember in high school, he'd wake me up, hey, come make rounds with me. And I'd get in the car and we go make rounds at the hospital and go to patients' rooms. And he'd say, here's my son, he's the next Dr. Riley. And, little planting seeds like that, right? So, and I tell this story all the time to students. So I got to Yale and I struggled a little bit in sciences. I remember going home that first Christmas, and I said, Dad, the Yale's kicking my butt. He said, look, just major in something you like. And then if medicine is for you, it'll happen. So he was very supportive. And like I said, I was struggled with the fact that I struggled with the sciences a little bit at Yale. And I graduated. I got my degree in anthropology, my bachelor's degree in anthropology. And I still didn't know what I wanted to do, Dale. And so I then worked for the mayor of New Orleans for 5 years.
And so I saw this in studying up on you. It was anthropology, but did you have a concentration in medical?
Yeah, it was medical anthropology. It was health and disease, focusing on how different cultures understand, or the anthropological word that we used was how do different cultures cognize disease, whether it's the Mayans or the Yorubas, or in the southern United States, Southern whites, Black Southerners, how they look at health and disease differently from an anthropological point of view. So I immersed myself in medical anthropology. The offshoot is called medical anthropology, and understanding how culture makes a big difference in diseases, and how communities and people around the world or around the United States understand health and disease and approach health and disease matters. So I found anthropology, and it had strains of biology in it. It's not, people think of anthropology as archaeology. That's just one piece of anthropology. But there's biological anthropology in it, which based on genetics and biology. But then there's medical anthropology, is how medical services are different cross-culturally. So it was just fascinating. So I did that, saying, hey, if I still want to go to medical school, this would be, helpful in some respects.
And then, so this is very fascinating. Okay, so you go there thinking you were going to major in something that would get you into medicine, but then you changed to anthropology with a medical focus, because that still puts you in a good position. But then you graduate and go work for the mayor.
Right. Well, by then I started thinking, hey, maybe I want to go to law school, because all my friends at Yale, gosh, all of my posse at Yale, 4 of my 6 friends went to law school. And at Yale, my gosh, we had all these great speakers come in, and this, famous judge and this famous lawyer, and, We used to go to the Yale Law School because that's where the movies were, and meet all these law students, and to hear about who they were going to clerk for, and work for this firm. So I did fall under the spell of that. Some of my heroes, even here in my office, I have a picture of Thurgood Marshall. Justice Marshall is one of my heroes. Great civil rights lawyer, Howard Law graduate, became the first Black Solicitor General of the United States. And then, of course, President Johnson put him on the court. So I've always loved the law. And so that's where the tug came in. So I ended up going home after Yale, and with my, few blemishes in my pre-med courses, but I graduated on time. I think I was only two or three A's short of cum laude. But I did have, a couple blemishes in the sciences. So I ran into the mayor of New Orleans, the first Black mayor of New Orleans, who is, again, not one of my great mentors, Dutch Morial, first Black mayor. So I ran into Mayor Morial at a picnic June after I graduated. And he said, "Son, what are you going to do? You just graduated from Yale." I said, "Mr. Mayor, I don't know. I'm on the fence between law and medicine." He said, "Well, send me your resume. Maybe there's a job down at City Hall you could do till you figure it out." So Dale, I had a one-page resume. All I had was, vice president, Black Student Alliance, community service, degree, bachelor's degree, Yale, anthropology, concentration in medical anthropology. In those days, there was no email, no fax machine. So I bailed it. But 2 weeks later, I get a call, "Hey, we got a job down here at City Hall. The mayor thinks you should do." So I swear to God, I thought I'd only stay a year working for the mayor. I loved it. Absolutely loved government.
So there's a huge lesson in this, right? So you'd never met him. So it's not as if somebody made a warm introduction or something.
Oh, no, I knew the mayor because some of his children went to my high school. As a matter of fact, his son went to my high school. So I saw the mayor parent functions, but that was before he was the mayor. He was just Judge Morial at that point. And then he ran for mayor. His campaign for mayor started right as I was graduating from high school. And his daughter was at Yale. And then, so I knew his kids. Mark Morial, president of National Arbor League. I've known Mark since we were tweens, in social circles in New Orleans. So, yeah, we knew each other. I didn't know him well. I campaigned for him, but then I went off to Yale. And like I said, the only thing he knew was that, "Hey, you graduated from Yale. What are you going to do with your life, son?" And
it shows you the power of networking, So, I mean, for the listeners, I want them to understand these things that, the opportunity comes from who in large part, right?
Yeah. And it's also intentional on the part of the mayor of New Orleans. Dutch was big about mentoring and advancing young African-American professionals. So he hires me at 21. I think I made 21 in May of that year. And by August, I was working for the mayor of New Orleans. I was working on something that had nothing to do with medicine. I was working on federal job training programs to get unemployed people trades and skills in order to get a good job and take care of their family, buy a house. So this was part of economic development work that the city of New Orleans was doing with federal job training funds. I found the work fascinating, because it was technical. It was strategizing. How do we get more people, trained as electricians and more people trained as this? Because we knew you get more people trained, they have jobs, they pay taxes, they buy houses, they, shop, etc. So I learned the fundamentals of economic development working in the mayor's office, just on job training programs.
Even with
I only wanted to stay a year, but next thing I think it was probably a year and a half in, I get a call from the mayor's secretary. Said, "The mayor needs to see you." I said, "Oh, what did I do wrong now?" So I go in to see the mayor. I said, "Son, sit down. Hey, you're doing such a great job. I want you to come work for me." I said, "Well, I already work for you, Mr. Mayor." He said, "No, I want you to be on my right hip all day." So I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going to bring you into the executive office of the mayor, and you're gonna be on my hip from the time I wake up until I tell you go home." Yeah.
So something that one of my vivid memories of you at Meharry, every time I saw you, you had the same guy always walking right there on your right hip.
Right. I had an administrative fellow. And because look, Dale, one of the things you learn so much being on the right hip of an executive, of a leader, And I did that for 3 years as the mayor's administrative assistant to the mayor, meaning I was his body guy. Anywhere in the world he was, it was me and a bodyguard with the mayor. I traveled with him. I learned how to travel. I wrote speeches for him. I was in meetings. I'm in the Congress with the big city mayors. I'm meeting the then Vice President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, because we're at a meeting at the next to the White House. I was the guy with him.
Like 24 years old or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
I'm 24 years old. And so the tremendous leadership training I got from that and how professionals interact, how people can disagree, and the politics of situations. So Dutch was a good student, or teacher rather, of understanding how relationships are so important for advancement in professional life. And he knew that I probably still wanted to go to medical school, but he still felt, hey, you come work for me, you can do anything, Riley.
So in going through that, in going through all that, you didn't get pulled away from medicine. You didn't feel like that I would think that would strengthen your urge to go into law.
Yeah. No, well, like I said, at a certain point, I loved government, but I didn't like campaigning. It was always a campaign. And, by then, after I knew that I had successfully worked for the mayor of New Orleans, I started getting a tug to go to medical school again. And I remember talking to my dad, and he said, look, you're still young, you're still single, you don't have a mortgage. I think what you've done is great in terms of working for the mayor. So if you want to go back towards medicine, then you should consider it. So I remember telling the mayor, I said, Dutch, I think I want to go to medical school. I'm going to start taking a couple courses at night at Tulane. He said, oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, no problem. No problem. You just get your work done for me. And then, so I started taking a couple courses at Tulane University at night. And then his term in office ended. And so he was term limited. He couldn't be mayor anymore. So by then I said, oh yeah, I'm going back to school. But I still had some pre-med work to correct. So I said, hedging strategy, I better get an MPH. So I got an MPH. I started working on an MPH. The last day in the mayor's office, I went right to class at Tulane because I was working on my MPH. And I finished that in 2 years on time in healthcare management. I had taken the MCAT that last year of MPH program and bombed it. I mean, my MCAT scores were terrible. I was crushed, but I got my MPH. I remember I did the same thing I tell people. I went to Kaplan. At that point, Kaplan was the only MCAT prep around. So I took Kaplan, did a little better, still didn't get any interviews that year. The third time I took the MCAT, I got a decent score. I had 3 interviews. I got 3 acceptances, and I chose to go to Morehouse School of Medicine.
So what were the other 2 programs you were looking at?
Tulane and LSU. So I got in Tulane and LSU on the third try.
And why the choice for that HBCU?
Well, my first choice, ironically, this is the irony of life. My first choice was to go to Meharry. Why? Because my dad went to Meharry, right? And I'd grown up around all his Meharry colleagues and friends. Matter of fact, one of his dearest friends was a Dallas physician, Dr. Watts, in Dallas, Nathaniel Watts, the Black surgeon. So that was one of his dear friends from his class at Meharry. I applied to Meharry, didn't get an interview, even though I was an alumni child. But I got in Morehouse, and Morehouse was a new medical school. It was only, I think, 35 students in each class when I got admitted. It was in Atlanta, so it was away from New Orleans. I felt there was time to leave New Orleans too, because I was so known as, the executive assistant to the mayor, the young guy, the young whiz kid, the kid from Yale that Dutch mentored and had on his right hip all those years. I felt there was time to leave New Orleans. And Morehouse was a great decision, one of the best decisions I ever made. It was also conscious too, because remember, my dad had gone to University of Michigan, a public Ivy, then he went to Meharry. And he said he always felt like he could walk into any room, whether black, white, or whatever. And that people would it would resonate with the white folks. He went to University of Michigan. It would resonate with black folks that he went to Meharry. And I always saw him do that code switching, which we all have to do as as African Americans. And I thought that was a good model. So I was very intentional. I wanted to go to Meharry, but I didn't get to Meharry, didn't get an interview, but I got in Morehouse. And I jumped when I got in Morehouse School of Medicine. Probably best education decision I ever made was to go to Morehouse School of Medicine.
So how was it? How was it when you got there, having spent most of your education with a PWI, and even high school, you went to, it sounds like a private school, PWI. So then you get to Morehouse, not everybody, most people look like you. Well, was there a culture shock at all, or were you kind of used to it just because you grew up in New Orleans and you were around?
Yeah, I grew up in New Orleans. So no, I was comfortable around Black folks, but the thing that blew me away, Dale, quite frankly, is wow, there are some really smart Black folks here. I'm just thinking of my classmates, and they were whip smart. They were just blowing the test. I'm sweating bullets, and boy, they just, I joke and say, Dale, you can graduate summa cum laude, magna cum laude, or thank you laude. So I'm a proud thank you laude graduate of Morehouse School of Medicine. But the thing about Morehouse is, and this is what, regrettably, some of you who go to non-Black schools, you don't realize it's normal for us to see Black physicians all day at Morehouse School of Medicine, at Meharry, Howard, or Drew. But when you get into residency, it's a culture shock. You never see a Black physician generally as a resident. And that did take me for a loop when I got to Baylor. When I got to Baylor, there were 55 first-year internal medicine residents. There were only 5 Black, and there were only 2 Black males.
Oh, wow.
Think about it. Out of 50, we had, Baylor still has one of the largest, internal medical residency programs. So that was a culture shock, not seeing Black physicians after going to Morehouse School of Medicine. That took a little, mind manipulation.
So this is good. So we talk about this in the documentary too. So you leave Morehouse around people who look like you, who are smart like you, who are brilliant, who have visions and dreams. You get down there to Baylor. It's flipped around now, so you're not around people who look like you. Mm-hmm. How did that impact your performance? I know there's a culture shock, but how did that culture shock actually impact your clinical performance and your confidence?
Yeah, well, look, I think the sociological term is called salience. When you are an African-American male in a predominantly white situation, it's called salience. In other words, when you're not there, they notice that you're not there, right? If you don't show up for rounds on time, where's Riley? If you miss checking an x-ray, that was Riley's patient, or, so you're right. I did feel, and I know Black males in particular feel this in medicine, sort of the enhanced scrutiny that we get as African-American professionals begins in residency. If you didn't go to an HBCU it began at Duke, or no, at Missouri. But for those of us who went to Black school, Black medical school, it doesn't begin till you get in residency, and you get this enhanced scrutiny, people challenging your knowledge base. I remember, one attending writing an evaluation, needs to strengthen his knowledge base, needs to read more. And I was like pissed off. I remember calling my dad. I said, oh gosh, they're doing that. They're still doing that. Yeah, Dad, they're still doing it. So, but and this is where I've counseled residents who are having difficulty. You can't overreact, nor can you underreact to those scenarios, because unfortunately it's part of what we have to go through that our white colleagues sometimes don't have to go through in training.
Yeah, I try to explain whenever I do my little, Q&A sessions for the documentary. Usually, I try to explain exactly what you just described. It's so simple, but I've actually never used that term, enhanced scrutiny. I mean, that's going to be part of my new lexicon. But I try to explain this idea that, if I'm in an operating room and if you ask me a question, more things go through my mind, because I'm not just thinking about the answer. I'm thinking of, what if I missed the question? What are they going to think about me?
Or are they trying to set me up? Are they trying to set me up? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all that. And then the other part of it is, I was on I did something with Damon Tweedy last year after the film came out too. We were on one of these sessions, and he was talking about how just when you walk into a room as a Black man or Black woman or as a minority, you spend so much mental energy trying to see who's on my side, who's not on my side. Are they going to attack me? And that's exhausting.
Right. No, it is. Dale, even at my level, as president of $1 billion enterprise here in New York City, I still walk into rooms and like I'm the only Black physician in the whole room in 2022. It's sobering, it's frustrating, but it's reality. And you're right. They test me the same way at my level that as when I was, a resident in terms of, well, hey, does he really know what he's talking about?
But did they test you that same way at Meharry?
It's all about progression. Life is like a blessing. Everything a win, loss is like a lesson. Ooh, ooh. Yeah, ain't no time for stressing. I've been really stepping. Ooh, ooh. Yeah, if you wanna go get it, stop playing around.